same sign. That motion clearly passes. Action on the minutes, which you have included in your board packets. And as you peruse them, if you have no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve those as distributed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Diamond, to approve the minutes as distributed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Motion clearly passes. And action on the vouchers. Mr. Pierce?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to approve vouchers totaling $289,981.30 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Mike and seconded by Karen to approve the vouchers for the amounts listed in the packet that Mike itemized. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion also clearly passes. Public participation. We have 3 folks that have signed up in the back of the room when I gathered it up. We'll go in order, I guess, that they signed. Kim Kraus is first, 2C and 5A.
Done? Okay. Good evening. My name is Kim Kraus. I think most of you know me. I'm a lifelong resident of Milton and an employee of the school district of Milton. I would like to express my sadness regarding the resignations of Tim Shiger and Jerry Schutz, along with my disappointment at the events and the actions that caused them to resign. I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with these 2 gentlemen, Tim for 12 years and Jerry for nearly 5 years. Their exit will leave a gaping hole in our district administrative team, one that is not easily filled. Tim and Jerry always have the best interests of our students at heart. They work diligently to provide opportunities for kids, to foster achievement, and to provide a sense of community for the children and the families in Milton. They work in a collaborative, ethical, and respectful manner with all staff and board members. This is my 20th year with the school district of Milton. I worked for 5 superintendents and 1 interim, and Tim is by far and away my favorite. He displays all the qualities of a great leader: visionary, trustworthy, integrity, confidence, positive energy, a lot of energy. He's fun. He's very fun to work for. He's innovative, inspirational, kind, and caring. The pool of quality applicants for the position of superintendent is shallow. It's really more like a puddle than a pool. We will be fortunate if we can find one candidate that embodies even a few of the same ideals, principles, and values as Tim Shiger. You will never find anyone with Tim's fantastic personality. He's 1 in a million. So I wish the board good luck as they embark on the daunting task of replacing Tim. They will need it. We all will.
Thank you. Next, by virtue of second on the list here, is Lance Fenna.
Good evening. On May 1st, Joe Martin read a statement concerning the resignation of Jerry Schutz and Tim Shiger. Included in the statement were 2 sentences. We anticipate the release of those agreements in the middle of next week. And this prepared statement reflects the only statement that the Board of Education intends to make at this time. As of today, May 13th, the agreements have not been released online that I could find. In fact, according to the Edgerton Reporter, 3 board members had not seen the resignation agreements as of May 5th and 6th. Also, 2 board members were not privy to the resignation prepared statement until the very morning that Joe Martin read it. I see that specifics for Jerry Schutz and Tim Shiger's resignations are not part of the meeting packet either tonight. I checked right before I came. How can the board vote on resignations when concealment or delay of pertinent information hinders the important vetting process that includes research before a vote? I find it disturbing that the board procedures and practices continue in a manner that
Third on the list is Chuck Jackson.
Good evening. I'd like to request that the board consider revising the policy as far as public participation in board meetings. Policy now says that you need to talk about things that are on the agenda, and that's all you can talk about. I don't see the value in limiting the community's options to only address the board on agenda items. The current policy represses the public's opportunity to inform the board of their issues and concerns. I've been coming to board meetings off and on for 3 years. I would suggest that there's only been a couple of times when there was an uneasiness in the room. You might like to hear what the person had to say, but as far as being an uneasiness in the room, it seldom happens. I think that this is the only opportunity for the individual to address the board and tell them their concerns. I think you should seriously consider revising the policy so that a person can come and say anything. I very strongly want to move forward in a positive manner with the things that have happened in the district in the last 6 months. But I feel that I need to make this statement. Considering the past issues the district has had to address, I was quite surprised to see the assignment of the chair of the policy committee. I really question if the board finds this to be some sort of cruel joke or just a lack of understanding of the relationship between the board and the community. Thank you.
Okay, that is all the folks that have signed up. Does anyone else wish to address the board? Seeing none, we will move on. Student council report. Miles and Anna.
So last week it was Teacher Appreciation Week. So the Student Council put together the Teacher Appreciation Luncheon that we do every year. And then Miles, I'll let you tell.
And then this week in Student Council we'll be deciding our next year's officers, and then also figuring out the ballot for who's going to be on Student Council as representatives as well.
Very good. Is that it?
That's all.
Okay, nice and brief. I learned tonight that this is the last meeting that Miles and Anna will be joining us in their capacity as student council reps. So I want to take this opportunity to thank them, and we certainly value all the insight and viewpoints that they bring. And I would invite my fellow colleagues and all of us in the room to acknowledge how much we value their input. Best of luck to both of you. Building and department announcements. Make your line and tell us what's going on.
As they are coming up to talk about their departments and buildings, I will make a brief announcement that as we prepare students for life beyond Milton High School, we do have our own Abigail Martin, who was crowned the new Alice in Dairyland. And so kudos to the district for preparing her for this new role, and congratulations to our board president, whose daughter is now the new Alice in Dairyland.
Congratulations, Mr. Alice.
As of Saturday night, I have lost my identity. I am now Alice's dad. But that's okay.
For building updates, MECA's Next Step Wired, all things alternative ed. This year we did ACPs, so seniors have been doing ACPs now the second year at the high school. The first year we did them in kind of a different way last year with our alternative ed kids, and this year we did them similar to the high school students that stay here, but it turned out wonderfully. I think everybody who was involved in those just saw how much growth and how much they've learned from having an alternative experience. So it was a really good day for our staff. Dan Thies helped them prepare those with Jane Dooley and Matt Smith, and it was a really positive thing. The MECAS Blood Drive, 2 things that you can be a part of. The MECAS Blood Drive is this Wednesday from 10 to 4 at the PBC. And then our end of the year picnic is at Shilbrick Park on Wednesday, June 5th, 11 a.m. So all are invited to come and share.
All right, at the middle school, we're kind of in transition out mode. Our incoming 7th grade orientation is a week from today, May 20th, at 6:30 at the middle school, where incoming students and families who are currently 6th graders will be joining our 7th grade staff to get a little orientation of the building. We're currently recruiting 7th grade students to become 8th grade web leaders for our web leadership orientation program as well. In terms of transition out, our parent group is actively collaborating with us on planning our 8th grade graduation ceremony, which will be Thursday, June 6th. From a summer school perspective, our high school 101 class is completely full, with current 8th graders who will be transitioning up to the high school next year as well. So a lot of transition in, transition out. I also want to say a quick shout out to our parent group for hosting an awesome Teacher Appreciation Week last week. Anna and Miles spoke about that, but our teachers were heavily spoiled with meals and goodies and a lot of sugar, and they felt very appreciated, as well they should. So thank you for our parent group for last week's Teacher Appreciation Week.
Just a couple updates from Northside. We're also in transition season. Today we got to host Milton East and Consolidated 3rd graders who got to learn all about Northside in the morning. They partnered up with a 4th grade classroom, got to experience the morning there, 2 recesses, which I think the kids are pretty fond of, a tour with the student council to learn more about our school, and then we ended our time together with some question and answer period with Mrs. Musgrove and I. We get to host Milton West and Harmony on Wednesday, and our parent orientation will be on Wednesday evening from 6 to 7 o'clock. Really our goal with all the transition activities, similar to the middle school with Mr. Beerwolf, is really just to try to help the students feel comfortable and at ease in a transition year, and hopefully reduce some of the anxiety. And I saw lots of smiles and thumbs up on the way out, so I think our teachers and staff were successful in that endeavor. Also wanted to give a shout out to our music department. 5th graders have been signing up for band and choir. We had 100 plus students sign up, and they'll be trying out instruments on Tuesday and Saturday morning, so there'll be lots of squeaks and the like as kids practice all the different instruments. So a shout out to those folks for volunteering their time for tryouts.
I think the rest of us can use the stand, John. I'd like to echo the thanks to our parent groups on behalf of all of our K-3 schools. Our parent groups really do so much for our schools. In addition to their efforts to volunteer and put on amazing acts of appreciation this past week, you know, the heart of our schools is often the strength of the support of our families. So these families work, many of them. They're all working as parents, of course, and many work outside the home, but they still find time to plan amazing events like color runs and carnivals and different kinds of movie nights and all of those things. When you sit back now as we close the year and you think back to all the opportunities that our students have had because of our volunteers, not just our parents, but also staff. A shout out to our staff who volunteer at many of these events. We're really, really lucky at the K-3 level to give the kids such a great start with so many different kinds of opportunities. So just a shout out to our families and our staff volunteers.
And in the area of teaching and learning in the K-3, we have our teachers working very hard trying to assess what all of our lovely K-3 students have learned throughout this year, and under the direction and supervision of our coaches, helping to make sure that as our students learned the information, that they actually retained the information and can now carry that through. So we just want to give a shout out to our teachers and our coaches who have really worked hard to get the assessment process going for our kids.
All right, and speaking of assessments, it's that season, and although Marcia was talking about the teaching and learning, I'm going to talk about community and opportunity. So amongst all that stuff going on in our classrooms, I think our community as a whole benefits from all of the opportunities provided in the school for students to recognize their families. So for example, muffins with moms at the 4K level, donuts with dads, and then across our district, but I'm going to speak specifically 4K to 3, about some of the things that classroom teachers do so that students can go home and recognize their families, whether this time of year it happens to be Mother's Day. But we know that families are different. They're a little bit more diverse nowadays. So just making sure that kids appreciate what they're getting from their homes. So thank you to staff across the district for providing those opportunities for our families.
The end of the year is busy. There are a lot of different things going on across the district. At the high school, since we last spoke, we were able to, this is the season, it's the concerts, it's the recognitions, it's the banquets, it's the student presentations. Tim and I had the pleasure 2 weeks ago to going up to the Badger Conference Top Scholars Banquet. We recognize our top scholars from the graduating class of 2019. It's always actually a highlight. We also, as Tara had mentioned, we had the academic and career plans. We had every single student complete their academic and career plan presentation. A big thanks again to those community members. I think it's kind of telling. Most of the community members, when they leave, they ask when are the dates the next year because they want to participate again in those. And so we're very grateful for them, and we're going to have to expand the size of those to be able to accommodate the volunteers. A couple dates of note coming up here. May 15th, that is this Wednesday, we have our Honors and Recognition Night. That is it's the induction ceremony into the various honor societies that the Milton High School is part of. That's the National Honor Society, National Art Honor Society, French Honor Society, Spanish Honor Society, our literary organization, and then the Presidential Academic Awards. We combined all of those events into one evening. And so we'll be inducting new members this Wednesday at 6:30. And then next week, Thursday, that's the 23rd, it's actually another very special night for the senior class that is also at 6:30. Both of these are in the auditorium. That is the Scholarship and Awards Night. And so each year there's over 50 different scholarships that will be given. It's actually hundreds of thousands of dollars that are given in scholarships to our students. It's a neat way to see the community that really rallies behind our students to get the class of 2019 off on a good start. I would like to publicly acknowledge there are many different community groups that have been filing through the high school over the last few months, interviewing students for scholarships. For each one of those scholarships, there's often a committee of volunteers who are going and trying to find out who to select those students. And so there's a lot that goes into that, and you get to see that firsthand by having everyone rotate through the building. And then finally, because we will not have a recognition, we'll actually be getting an invite, but graduation is June 9th. And we'd love to see the full board there. It is a Sunday, June 9th. The ceremony's at 2 o'clock. It's going to be shining out, and there will be a cloud in the sky. Kim, you can start the jokes now. But at 1:50, thanks, Kim. But at 2 o'clock ceremony, we usually get the board together about 1:30 for pictures ahead of time, and at 1:15 to congratulate the graduates in the gym before. Thank you.
The district student services update. Last week was the National School Nurse Appreciation Day. We have one nurse in the district. Her name is Erin Cothouse. She does an amazing job of keeping everybody healthy. She has 3 people that support her: Pam Nuzzo, Jan Stanke, and Michelle Hebner. And they are not in every building, but they have a lot of additional help between our building administrative assistants as well as our principals hand out Band-Aids and ice packs as needed. Just a fun fact from our health report that Erin does every year. Last year's statistics, we have 186 students in the district that either have severe seizures, severe allergies, or are diabetic. When you think of schools, you oftentimes think of the academics or the behavioral piece, but please understand this is another aspect that we're trying to keep kids safe. And we had over 7,000 visits to the health offices last year. That's a lot of Band-Aids and a lot of ice packs, and hopefully that's all at once.
Good evening. From the tech department, I'd like to use this time for 2 shameless plugs. I'm not going to lie about it. First, as you know, we are blessed to be a one-to-one district. We have over 3,500 devices in the hands of students and another 200-300 in the hands of our teachers. And one of our leaders in that area, Sean Harvey, so Sean, if you'd stand. Yeah, you didn't know what's coming either. Sean didn't. Yeah, this one. Sean made the choice to go back to the classroom, and the classroom is going to be a better place for it. But Sean was a pioneer and helped us lead the last 5 years in tech integration, and he's going to be sorely missed in that field. And I just want to give him a quick round of applause because he certainly has done a great job for us. we're in a better place for the work that he's done. So now that I got that shameless plug out of the way, as I mentioned, we're a one-to-one district, and you know, one of the statistics I've been reading a lot lately is that 77% of jobs next year will need technology, and that's in 2020. And then also, we hear a lot of concerns like, there's too much screen time. So how do we deliver both? And tomorrow night, 7 p.m., again, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., this room, we'll be holding a conversation with the community, and we'd love to hear input from that. We did a very, very, very informal survey, just some starter points for some conversation. So tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. We would love to have everyone come. We know the weather's nice, but please try to come, because we do believe, as according to our strategic plan, that we should work together. We should engage the community, and I think there's no better conversation about that we can get together than what's best for our kids. How do we deliver both? How do we make amazing people with this technology, and how do we make sure that they, don't overdo it too? So please free to join us tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
I'm sorry, we thought we had one more waiting in the wings, but that wraps up the building and department announcements. Thank you for all of that. Moving along, Human Resources Committee, Mr. Westrick.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. You knew you were on deck. The HR committee has been pretty busy the last few weeks. We had discussions. We had our last meeting we had was Thursday, May 9th. We had 3 discussion items and 3 informational items. Prior to that, we met with the MEA on April 24th to make an offer to the MEA as far as wages. And prior to that, we met in executive session on April 22nd to determine what that offer may be. So during our May 9th meeting, our April 24th meeting, we made the offer to the MEA for an increase of 2.44%. And that was the Consumer Price Index. That was the maximum amount allowed by state law. And that was the offer that we made to the MEA. At our meeting on May 9th, we talked about it, and it brings us to this point. And we have, as on the agenda, a discussion, possible ratification. So, Chris, have I missed anything?
Just one point of clarification, the 2.44 is on the base wage.
Correct.
The teacher salary is made of base wage, the educational merit, the successful evaluation merit, along with any kind of hard to fill stipends or a master educator stipend, master's degree stipend. That equals then the total.
Okay, thank you. So is there any further discussion on the offer to the MEA of 2.44 on base?
I'm seeing none. I would entertain a motion to take action on the approval and ratification of the MEA Master Agreement for 2019-2020.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Moved by Tom and seconded by Diamond. Is there any other discussion on that motion? We'll roll call this one, and I'm going to go to my left. Tom?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Joe is yes.
Karen?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, Diamond. And Rick?
Yes.
7-0, motion passes. Thank you for that.
Okay. The next item on the agenda this evening is the district organizational structure. At our last HR meeting, we had a lot of discussion concerning the organizational structure that we have in place now versus the possibility of going back to a more traditional business manager form of organization. We had some pretty spirited discussions going back and forth. We have no recommendation from the HR committee, but we wanted to bring this to discussion in open session as in front of the entire board. So I will open it up for any discussion from any board members concerning the organizational structure.
I guess I'll go first. I'm just in favor of going back to the traditional structure with a business manager, and I think that worked well. And yeah, so that's just kind of my opinion.
Anybody else have any input?
I don't. I would say I don't have an opinion at this time, but I would like to gather more information, such as what's better versus, now versus a year ago before the reorganization, what people liked about it, what they didn't like about it, why the change is better or may not be better, whichever.
Okay. I can share with you one little nugget, and not to steal any thunder from a successive discussion item down the agenda a little bit, but as I started inquiring about possible paths that we would take for our superintendent search, most folks in the upper echelons of the administrative world are familiar with some of the things that have gone on in our community. So explaining to them what our needs might be, part of that was the way that we're organized, and as I explained that, or as they understood it for the most part, I got a couple compliments in that we are maybe on the forefront of organizational structures that schools, one administrative person told me that this is the model that people are aspiring to be, and by that I mean not that we not necessarily keep or have a traditional business manager, but that we have some of the duties that business managers in other districts handled by other folks, and the business manager focuses on money, where it comes from and where it goes, to be very simplistic. So I don't know, I'm not necessarily espousing one path or the other, but it was shared with me that we very much are admired by some folks that know what we've done, and I just think that we should, maybe keep that in mind as we start our search. So, anybody else have thoughts? Otherwise, we'll let Tom move on.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I guess I'd like to see the traditional superintendent and business manager form. I'm just comfortable with that. I've seen it work over the years.
So at our meeting last week, was it? Yes,
yeah.
Last week. We did have some administrators at the table who shared their opinions of the reorganization. Even one started off by sharing that initially was not on board with it, and by this time now, it's been kind of a godsend to how continuity runs. It's actually increased decision-making abilities. So I really encourage us as board members, if you haven't been talking to the people that it's directly impacting, that you do talk to them, because they're the ones that do this every day. So I've heard from a few building principals and a few people at the district office, and I encourage others, if they have opinion one way or the other, to share it with us. But I also think it's important that we seek people out and ask them how it impacts them. And not only just the district staff or the administrators, but also that support staff. Because we also heard from them as well last week.
Since I'm kind of the last one to weigh in here, I'm kind of in the same boat with Rick. I've heard some very positive things about the way the organization is set up now. I've also heard some kind of positive things going back to the old traditional business manager role. So I guess for me, I would like to learn a little bit more about what a business manager does. I guess I didn't realize that those were all of the duties that a business manager was assigned, and just kind of see where that's at. I also think we should also let the new superintendent, there's the other part of that is we've got a new superintendent potentially coming in, and I think some of what goes on should be his or her choosing, rather than us just saying, here you go, conform. You know, I guess having an idea of what we're looking for in the district or wanting is something we could convey during our search process and interview process. But I do believe that ultimately, whoever that new superintendent is should have final say on what goes on, whether it's business as usual now or we go back to a traditional business manager.
So just to piggyback on what you said, Karen and Rick, I guess one thing that would be nice is if we could get a list of districts, school districts currently in Wisconsin that are using the same organization structure, so we can benchmark them and see what's good, what's bad with them. I'm not aware of any that are using this, but I'm sure there may be.
Yeah, I have gotten some initial information on just kind of business office, not necessarily business manager per se, but what a business office of a school district should do. And it's a lot, and transportation is in there, and nutrition is in there, and so those are a lot of things that I didn't realize were part of the business office or business manager's responsibility. And so I think even just taking a look at maybe other districts' job descriptions for what they have for a business manager and what their responsibilities are, maybe another option for us to pursue.
I haven't had an opportunity to chime in, so I'd like to do it now. I think I'd like to see us continue going on the road we are now. It seems as though, maybe not at first, but it is gaining some traction as far as being very streamlined when it comes to decision making. We have had correspondence, and Chris, you can maybe help me with this, from some outside consultants that could help us get through the transition period until we do get that new superintendent. And I do agree with you, Karen, that it ultimately would be the superintendent's responsibility to decide the organization of the district office. So, but Chris, can you talk a little bit about the person from Baird that has offered their assistance?
Absolutely. The piece that Tim Scheiger had alluded to in the HR committee, I believe was Diane from Baird. And Diane is, I think she currently is, but she handles the business manager program at UW-Whitewater. And during that time, Debbie Towns, who was my instructor through the program, also ran that same kind of program. So I would think that Diane would be available to help out with the district, or for the school district of Milton, as we transition through that period of time as like an independent consultant, if you will, to help the district go through that process. If the board decides to look at hiring a superintendent first, and then having that individual help with the setup of how district office will function, Diane or any member of the Baird team would be perfectly fine to help counsel on the pitfalls and the hurdles that a business manager will have to overcome.
Tim, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think real quick to that piece, that there is the ability, much like we did with the nutrition team this year, if we bring in someone from this person from Baird, she's overseeing the teaching of this position to prospective business managers, the OE license, and she'd be willing to work with us throughout the summer into the time period of the annual meeting to make sure that all of the different the checklist items that I would say would be covered. So we have capable people in Deborah and Wendy in the business office, and the addition of this person as a consultant would help us get through those areas. Of course, we also have the other side of Baird to help us out with the referendum items, and we have and as well as Huffman's, etc. So we were set up moving forward to be successful through the audit this year and through the annual meeting, if that's what the board wishes to do, because obviously there's going to be some transition time with either an interim or a permanent superintendent. But the business side of things, and as well as other factors, we're also looking at other pieces. We're working diligently to have something in place for the school safety, to monitor those grants, the communication side of things. There's a lot of pieces to this. And if you go back into our August meeting, when I proposed the organizational structural change, it was based on the talents and the skills of the people in the district, ultimately, which makes the organization better and function more efficiently. And that's what we've been living now for almost a year, and has worked out really well. And to the point that some have mentioned, that some people were initially were skeptical within the administrative team and within the district office, but since living it, it actually has helped out in many ways, especially with the distractions of the past few months. And so there's a lot to offer, but at the same time, it really comes down to all the tasks need to get done, and where they are housed is not as relevant as to making sure that they all get done. And so that's something to be thinking about, and I would encourage staff, board members, to talk to staff as well. And there's obviously plenty of organizational structures out there. Some districts have a very similar structure, many do not. It really depends on what you feel is best. And to the comments earlier about letting the superintendent choose that, that's what you did with me. You allowed me to run the organization. So it really depends, again, on how much of a management board do you want to be, or do you want to be a policy board? And that's really something that you guys have to kind of walk through. So.
Okay. Chris?
One more comment, Tom, when it comes to the hiring of the superintendent, any type of administrative or even teacher position, the ideal time to hire is anywhere from January through now, because that's when people are looking for jobs for the new school year. So just to put that caveat out there, I'm sure people would be willing to come to Milton, because I think Milton is still a destination district. But they would have to be currently leaving their current contract for administration that would start on July 1st. So something just to keep in mind.
Okay, and that's a perfect segue into our next action item. That was just a discussion. There was no action to be taken on that.
I did have one question, Tom.
Yes.
If we looked toward that contracted service from Baird, we can't act on that tonight, of course, but has she made an offer of what that may or may not be, fee-wise, et cetera? Could we have that for an action item next meeting if we chose to?
Absolutely.
So my question is, and maybe I didn't quite process this correctly, but are we kind of, if we have that person from Baird and we take action on it and we say, yep, that's what we want to do, are we saying that, yep, we want to keep on track with the current way the structure is now, or is that just for assistance to get us through the budgeting process?
The purpose of that was to have someone in place, because with Jerry and I leaving in the next month and a half, you need someone to help oversee the checklist of all the business office stuff. And so rather than assuming that you'll have people in place by then, we want to make sure that the district is set up for success. And so having a person available to a contracted service would allow for the checklist items to get to the audit, to get through potentially the annual meeting. Again, if you bring someone in sooner than later, and for example, if you hire a superintendent, for example, that has a business background, that person might be able to navigate, you wouldn't need the service as much. We just wanted to make sure that you were not left without the support needed. So again, it's a contracted service, and we'll share out that contract. I believe we have a proposal that we'll have from her tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest to the board, just to look at, consider, we can just discuss. You don't have to make a quick decision on it, but we wanted you to have a platform or a support system there, so that way you didn't feel like you had to rush a decision with the processes that you're about to embark upon.
I guess I'm just want to make sure that we don't rush into it and make the decision and take action on the next board meeting, because I'd like to see some other alternatives or options as well. I know that Mike Pierce has mentioned that there's a business manager at through CISA too that we might be able to work with as well. And so I think we got a couple options. I just don't want to look at just one option. I'd like to see a couple of them to see what's best for the district.
That might be good for the finance committee to do a meeting.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the superintendent search process. Again, we had some lengthy discussion at our HR meeting about which way to go, whether to do a quick search and see what we have out there for a full-time superintendent, or to contact one of two organizations, the board's organization or the administrators or organization, to see what type of pool we have out there for potential interims. We, again, as a personnel committee, did not have a recommendation, but we wanted to bring it forward for discussion this evening.
All right, I'll go first because I sort of volunteered this to the board at our most recent meeting. Then I didn't. When I started on this, I decided that we probably should leave no stone unturned and find out what the options are for a potential candidate. So I reached out to WASB, Wisconsin Association of School Boards, which obviously we're a member of. They have a search capacity that they offer, and visiting with those folks, they would be ready, willing, and able to help us, and I think historically probably have. That's a fee-based service, somewhat negotiable depending on what you ask of them. They can do a complete process whereby they identify candidates and you partner with them to do background checks, interviews, second interviews, and all the associated research work on a potential candidate, all the way to some portion of that would cost you somewhat less. I subsequently reached out to WASDA, which is Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators, and they have a very similar capacity, if you will, and quite honestly, right on their website have a list of interims. And visiting with those folks, explaining also that we have a vacancy or a potential vacancy. When I was talking to them, they can offer much the same advice, if you will. They do not charge a fee for that by virtue of our administrator being a member of that organization. And then I also sort of word of mouth shared with all my administrators, our administrators, to just anecdotally share names of folks in the industry that they know are recently retired or potentially capable of filling this vacancy. So I've not heard from anybody specifically, but just wanted to share that with the board, that those are at least initially what seemed to me to be possible places to look for a potential superintendent. And I wanted the HR committee to take the lead on this and identify a path and get the board's support to pursue path X, whatever we decide that's going to be. So.
Okay. So once you get going, though, with the process, it will probably be a board as a whole, I would think, because...
Oh, absolutely, it'd be my thought.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So what you're doing is just having the HR figure out our path forward, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
And make recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Because I was just
absolutely,
thinking,
yeah.
other times I was on the board, a couple old board members here, but we always...
Former board member.
Yep. Right. But yeah, we always, because you got to get everybody to buy into it. They have to know every interview.
I would like to at least have it brought forward and discuss that potentially an interim superintendent until we hit that sweet spot of January through now, which may be next year or in 6 months or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Brian, I think I maybe did not state that also, as I told folks when we were potentially looking, that we were looking, and I actually characterized it as an interim. And I was advised that it may or may not be an interim, leave all options open. So if we find a candidate that we feel good with that is an interim type of a solution, okay. If we find a candidate that we all like and want to be the person, we don't necessarily have to tag them with interim. So it's a both or an either or, I guess, however you want to look at it. So thank you.
Any other comments? I think as the HR committee, we would like to set up a meeting sooner than later. And when that date is set, get individual input from each one of the board members on what they would like to see as a potential pathway. And at that meeting, we could come up with a recommendation and then bring it forward at the next board meeting.
And Tom, is June 6th too late, or are you looking for something sooner?
That may be too late. We may have to have a special meeting.
Okay.
To get that done sooner than later. And I agree with Chris and Kim. I think the candidate pool is going to be somewhat shallow, going by the number of vacancies this spring in the state. So yes, we're looking at all different options and which way would be the best for our district to go forward. So we will set up an HR meeting after the meeting tonight, and then we'll get that process started.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Tom, I'd like to throw in there just which kind of brings me to my thought. Since the potential pool probably is going to be a puddle within the state, I would offer the suggestion that we open this search nationwide and not just focus on just even surrounding states. I think we need to go further out than just with Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan.
No stone unturned.
No stone unturned. We want it.
Look at a lot of the virtues of southern Wisconsin.
Okay, any other comments about the search process? Moving on, the next item is discussion and possible action on the 1920 teacher compensation. If you look in your board docs pack under executive, it has an example of our compensation offers to the entire teaching staff. Chris, would you like to hit on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So the spreadsheet that's in front of you lists out all of our teachers and their 18-19 compensation, as well as what we're looking for the 19-20 compensation. Please note that one of the things that's coming up is the staffing report a little bit later on. I emailed out updated copy of that to you this morning because we secured 3 additional teachers last week and creating those contracts for those individuals, and we have verbal acceptance. So the list that you have, if there's any changes on this, we'll put them on the staffing report for your review and potential approval. And then once the contracts are approved, then we offer those contracts signed by the board to the individual to review and fingers crossed sign and get back to us.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions concerning the format of the compensation package for the teachers? With that, I would like to make a motion that we accept the 1920 teacher compensation as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Tom, seconded by Diamond to approve the teacher compensation as presented for 2019-20. We will do roll call again, and I'm going to the other end of the table. Rick?
Yes.
Diamond?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Joe is yes. Brian?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Unanimous, 7-0, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the possible action on the 1920 administrative compensation package. And if you remember, we agreed on a 2% increase. You have that document in front of you as well from board docs. Any questions on that document?
I don't have any questions, but I do have discussion.
Okay.
Right now, we're going to, looks like we're going to take action, here's my discussion piece, but possible action on these administrative compensations. And at the last board meeting, I had mentioned that we still don't have a lot of the things that were recommended in the 2 investigations in place. Namely, red line contracts. Any new contracts would be redlined and provided to the board. And another one, probably the most significant one, is to address payouts for vacations not taken, or anything outside of the contract, such as additional work, getting additional pay for work not in the contract. And so those items haven't been put in place. There was a recommendation of a policy or putting it into the actual contract. So without those in place, I think it's kind of partially unfair to the administrators because they don't know what the rules of the game are. If they do something extra, are they going to get paid for it or aren't they? And with that, because those aren't in place, I feel really bad that I'm going to do this to the administrators because I think they're well deserving of a lot of the increases that they're going to get, but I cannot in good conscience vote yes for this without those recommendations put in place.
And this, the document in front of you, it talks about just the wages. It doesn't talk about a lot of the other things, but it's just specifically the wages.
So the policy for like how they pay out vacation pay, that can still be changed after this contract is. I think that's what Brian said. It's unfair to the administrators, but okay. But as long as it can be rectified like we're supposed to, we get some of those straightened out.
Well, remember that the contract is the contract with the individual administrator and the board. Policy will not supersede that. So, as you recall, that what the timeline has been, we do the contract renewals in January, and then they, go through the year. If there's a wish to change contract language, then I think you really need to sit down and have a conversation about changing the contract language. But policy will not supersede what the administrators and the board sign. And if there's wishes to change the working conditions for the administrators, then I think that's a conversation that needs to happen with them present, because there's an expectation that their conditions are going to be upheld. If there's desires to look at payout or different types like vacation pay or PTO pay or whatever, then those are conversations that should be had. But I think that what you have right now is you have a situation where administration, the past practice has been contract updates in January. And obviously it takes place in July 1st, but that's the contracted time. We obviously have delayed it now 5 months, but the process has been that, and I think where the next year, meaning in this coming school year, you're going to have to either issue a continuance or letters of not receiving, because they'll be living year 2 of their current contract. And so I think that's where there's some considerable and justifiable anxiety, insert the word, if they're not going to continue with a 2-year contract for this coming year. I think that there's considerable concern from the administrators on that. And so to the point of that this is to approve increase of the percentage, but there's more to it than that. So if there's going to be a redo of the contract, then there's choices to be made, because administrators currently have a 2-year contract that runs through 2020, and administrators can choose to accept your line items or not accept the list. So there's a lot of there's a bigger discussion, I think, than just that it needs to be looked at more. If you do need to look at it more, then I would highly suggest you do it sooner than later, because the anxiety and the working conditions have been affected through this process, and I think that if the board is truly wanting to support the administration, these are opportunities to show support. I'm not disagreeing with anyone's opinion on the board. I'm just saying that the lack of action sends a different message than what comes out verbally.
I would agree and feel strongly that we're going to need to do both. I think we should move forward on this, approve the increase in compensation. I also think we should continue the discussions that Brian outlined to address those policy issues. All of those potential changes would affect future contracts in my book. So I don't think it's at all ambiguous to move forward with the administrators under the same working relationship we have. We want to put forward our support for them and our enthusiasm. And as we weigh through or walk through some of those issues that Brian brought up, yep, if we decide to make a change, it would be for subsequent contracts offered to administrators, etc. To me, it's just logical. You can't change for anybody that's shouldn't change for anybody that's currently under contract.
Any other discussion? Hearing no other.
For just clarification, we're talking about the compensation, not talking about the contract language. That's two separate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, because the contracts that I'll be putting forth, I emailed the Board of Education templates of what the administrative contracts look like. So there is nothing changing on those administrative contracts. It is the dollar amount and then the date that they are effective for. So the contracts that I, if approved tonight, I'll be creating will start July 1st of this year and go for 2 years, ending on June 30th of 2021.
And when would those contracts be approved? I mean, from my understanding, what everybody's just saying, we're just approving the compensation, the dollar number. When would we approve the contracts?
That's what these are tonight.
So we are approving contracts?
You are approving the contracts. That's based off the template that I emailed out.
Yeah, then my comments stand. I cannot, in good faith and good conscience, vote yes for this, and I really apologize for the administration and for, I mean, this isn't their fault at all. It's the board's fault for not taking action when we should have.
The stuff that Chris mailed out, is there specific things that you noted on those, on what he sent out to us that you're not happy with?
Yeah, it doesn't have anything that has been outlined by the recommendations by the investigation.
Thanks for the specifics.
Okay, any other discussion? With that, I'd make a motion to accept the administration compensation presented, as presented.
Second.
We'll grab Rick on that. Motion by Tom, seconded by Rick, to approve the 2019-20 administrator compensation as presented. Any further discussion? We will roll call this one, and I guess I'm an odd number. We're going back to my left. Tom?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Brian?
No.
Joe is yes. Karen?
Yes.
Diamond?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
6-1, that motion passes. Thank you.
Next item is the support staff compensation sheet. That is also in our packet.
And Tom, if I might, that is just a template. I really wanted to show what that template looked like. Traditionally, we have not had a full board meeting at the end of May because of Memorial Day. But I would like the board to consider the support staff compensation during that time. And that would be the non-administration staff, custodians, nutrition team, aides, works.
Okay. Any other questions for Chris pertaining to that? Okay, thank you, Chris. Our last item is the employee benefits statement, and this came out through the benefits advisory group discussions, where it was brought up on what the district's support to the teachers and staff actually is when it comes to benefits. Chris Watson put together the documents that you have in your packet, and it outlines 3 or 4 of the different pay grades as far as what the district pays for benefits versus what the employee pays for benefits. I think it's a great tool. I think probably some of the teachers and staff are going to open their eyes and say, really, I didn't know that. So I think it's a great tool, and hats off to Chris Watson for putting these together. I guess we don't have any action on this, but I just think I'd like some input from the rest of the board members as far as the importance of this tool that Chris put together.
I know she worked very hard on it. It's more of a supplemental tool to the information you already or the staff already has. It allows them to take all of their benefits and put them together on one page and see what that looks like, instead of having to flip through all of their different options and things that they have to manage themselves. So it definitely allows them to get a bigger picture in an easier manner.
One thing that Chris made sure that if this document is looked at, it can change because of the many different options that an employee has as far as insurance buyout and things of that nature. So, but it's a great tool. At the end, it can be done specifically for each person, and then that's pretty much very accurate as far as what the district versus what the employee pays for benefits. Any other discussions? Hearing none, Mr. President, that's a wrap.
Good. You had a lengthy committee report, but this time of year the HR folks are busy, so thank you for that. Moving on, new business. We are up to discussion and possible action on our CISA 2 services and contract with Ms. Probst.
Good evening. This is your annual CISA 2 approval of the services and contracts with CISA 2. CISA 2 services 74 different school districts. We are one of them. What you have listed is a number of items that we are contracting with them for, and if you'll notice, you have 3 different ways of font. There's a bold font, there's a normal font, and then there's an italics font. The bold font is an automatic charge. That's the membership in CISA 2. It's slightly up. It's based on per pupil. This gives us, we're required to pay this because of the work that they do to help us be, they're kind of the liaison between DPI and the Department of Education. For me personally, CISA 2 will interpret what DPI has decreed, and then they bring it down to our level so that I can implement it in the district. The items that are italicsed, the educational audiology as well as the professional development, those are changing numbers because it's based on the professional development, how much we want to contract for once we determine our needs, and we won't determine those needs until August. This year, that professional development is focused on co-teaching. About 5 years ago, we started doing co-teaching at the middle school, saw some really nice gains. Last year, we folded in the high school, did training for co-teaching, and next year we will be adding on Northside. But until we decide how many teachers we are going to support with co-teaching, we won't know how much we need. The educational audiology, that's a student-based, so we have between 10 and 15 students in the district that need to have those services. And so if we have 5 more move in, that number will go up, and if we have 5 students that move out, that number will go down. And then the other items in there are all support of students with disabilities. You have Assistive Tech Academy and Library. The Academy is we send people to be trained and to become more aware of different types of assistive tech for our students with disabilities. And the library allows us to borrow equipment that is very expensive. So we can borrow it, we can try it out with the students, so a device might cost $10,000 to $15,000. We can borrow it for a while and find out, oh, that doesn't work, and it allows us to borrow something else. And then the last items on there, the Professional Resource Center. It allows our, again, special ed teachers to borrow materials. Last year we borrowed over $20,000 worth of materials that we didn't have to pay for that rate. That's 1 month. Some months it'll be up as high as $60,000. If we find that we're using materials all the time, we'll purchase them ourselves instead of borrowing from them. And lastly, the Transition Network. Students with disabilities, as soon as they turn 14, we have to start creating a transition plan for them. And that plan is to help them move into life after high school. And so things are changing constantly in the community. We send a team of 3 people to those networking meetings to find out what's the cutting edge for our students so that we can find a place of employment for them if at all possible. This does require action. Oh, there is one other item on there, and that's the dialogue with the attorney. Because special ed is so specialized, this allows me the opportunity when something unique comes up in the district to actually seek counsel by somebody who probably knows more than a typical attorney would know. It does require action if you should be moved. Or questions?
Anybody have any questions for Susan?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 CISA 2 services and contract at a total cost of $34,837.20 as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded by Tom with the motion as outlined that he said there to approve our CISA contract for 1920 for the $34,837.20. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion clearly passes. Thank you. Action on 18-19 open enrollment alternative applications. Kim, what do we have?
Amazingly enough, they're still coming in at this late date in the year, but we do have 4 that are transferring out to Janesville.
4 out, 0 in, I gather.
Yes.
I would entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the open enrollment alternative applications as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Karen, seconded by Diamond to approve the open enrollment applications. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion also clearly passes. 1920 board committees, WASB delegates, and building representatives. And I will just quickly read them, as all of you have been passed out. One of the tasks of the president, obviously, is to assign the folks to these committees. My goal was to not move people around an awful lot. I think most folks get some familiarity and some background in the committees they work on, and we want to capture that as best we can. I tried to take myself out of some of the committees and would only participate in as needed. And then obviously with last year's president, Tom, kind of doing the same thing, we plugged him back into a couple spots. Finance is Mike and Diamond as co-chairs and myself. Strategic planning, we are going to leave as the entire board with Karen and I co-chairing that. Policy, I'm going to have Tom chair that with Brian and Rick. Transportation is Karen as the chairperson and Rick and Mike. Curriculum and co-curricular activities, Karen is going to chair that with Diamond and Tom. Human resources is Tom chair and Diamond and Mike. Technology is Mike as our chair with Karen and Brian. Legislative is chaired by Brian with Karen and Rick. Our CISA 2 delegate is Tom Westrick. Our staff advisory rep is Diamond McKenna. WASB delegate will be Tom with Mike as an alternate. And our building representatives are going to stay the same with Rick assuming Don Brewing's spot at Consolidated. So that is what I have come up with for committees, and I hope everyone enjoys their work on the committees. We certainly need that structure, and I think it'll help us be efficient and move forward. 1920 school board calendar. It's a remainder of this year and leading us into summer. There's not an action on this. I think this is an FYI, if I'm right. Yeah, we're not acting on this. This is just FYI. Also shared out on the website to give us some meeting dates that are coming up to us. Obviously, toward the end of that list is we are already May 11th. We're going to meet Tuesday the 26th by virtue of Memorial Day being Monday. And
This is for next year's calendar.
We're meeting Tuesday the 28th.
Joe, you should probably read what they give you. My apology.
That's 2020. That's 1920.
My apology. So we are looking at next year's school board calendar. So here again, we're not acting on this tonight. This is an FYI. If no questions on that, we will move forward. Referendum update. Is Mr. Huffman here? He's.
Yeah, we have a representative from Steve Flavin, who is a part of all of our discussions as well. He's working with Huffman Associates, and so They will be providing the updates to the board on a regular basis, and he can explain what's been going on recently and also kind of how you'll be going about updating them. So welcome.
Thank you. Just a word of advice. Stretch your Achilles tendon before you exercise. Very costly. Hi everyone, my name is Steve Clavin, and I'm sorry Mike isn't here yet, but he's a member of the school board in Columbus, so they had a meeting simultaneously at the same time. So he's on his way over here. My name is Steve Clavin, and I've been assigned the Middleton School District project by Mike. I've worked with Mike for many years, and in that capacity I was a senior project manager at Findorf. I retired in June. I have 37 years in the construction business and 22 years with Findorf. And on April 15th, we were officially brought on board as the owner's rep. Huffman Facility Development is owned by Mike Huffman, and he's been an owner's representative for 20 years. He's working with several other school districts at this time, and has a good background in this kind of work. Our main focus is to represent the owner, the Middleton School District, in dealings with the architect, contractor, and municipality. Our primary job is cost management. We monitor the budget throughout the entire process using a master budget project schedule, and that accounts for all the expenses that will occur under the referendum budget. We also provide cost-benefit analysis, review of the contractor's estimate at each stage of the progress of the drawings, value engineering, and quality control. And once construction begins, we'll be on the site on a weekly basis, participating in Cullen's progress meetings. Those are held by Cullen on a weekly basis. And basically, we're your eyes and ears on the ground during the construction project. We also monitor schedules, milestone schedules, making sure that those key milestone dates are being met. And one of the most important things we can do is to keep you informed each step of the way so that you can make informed decisions. Our goal is to avoid surprises and to maintain clear and open communication between all the stakeholders. And I hope that after we're through with this project, you do consider us to be an asset. That's our goal. Board met last on April 22nd, and here's what's taken place since then with regard to the architect and some of the meetings that we've had with some of the stakeholders. Typically, we'll do a monthly report. Mike recently shared an example of that with you, Tim, that he's using with the Verona School District. And that report is a PDF that's sent to the school board, highlighting activities, important meetings, job progress once construction begins, key milestone dates, along with photographs. And this can be a really great tool to use to send out by email or post to your website. It tells you what we've accomplished, what the team's accomplished in the past 2 or 3 weeks, and what's scheduled for the upcoming 2 or 3 weeks. It's very useful because it keeps people informed with the progress of the project. And since there's going to be multiple projects happening at one time, that will be a central focus of where things stand at any point in time. So on April 22nd, we met with Jeremy and Brian from the high school and the architect to review the current set of schematic drawings. We toured the entire school, discussed programming, and then began to discuss specific design issues. So the next step with the high school is for PRA, the architect, Plunkett Racich, to incorporate those comments, those ideas into a revised set of drawings, and then for us to all get together, sit down and review those. And that's going to happen in approximately 1.5 to 2 weeks. I haven't heard yet from them, but they're working on those drawings now. On May 3rd, we met with the K-3 group, including principals from Harmony, Consolidated, West and East, and similar to the meeting with PRA, and the high school, we walked through the current plans, got feedback from the staff, and so the next steps for PRA is to incorporate some of those comments into the schematic design and start focusing on typical classrooms, room capacities, and begin to look at equipment and furniture needs. And our next meeting with the K3 group is going to be May 20th, the week of May 20th. May 9th, we met with the district accounting staff, Wendy, Julie, and Sarah. Mike walked them through the master project budget system that he uses to monitor the total costs. So I think there's some further conversations that'll take place there, but we at least dipped our toe into how we like to collect information, manage information. We also reviewed the bids that were received by PRA for civil engineering and the pool consultant and sent our comment to Steve Shantz. And we received copies of the contracts the district has between Cullen and PRA, just to make ourselves familiar with the terms of those contracts. So I'm really happy to be here. I think Mike's going to walk in the door at any moment. But we're really here to serve you, and we're very open to suggestions or any questions that you may have. But the combined years that Mike and I have, I think will bring some good results to your efforts here, and we appreciate being part of the team.
So these first few weeks have been setting up just the relationships, what are the templates going to start to be, and so they'll be sharing the templates with you as far as the schedule, the calendar, the budget. So these first couple of weeks have just been acclimating to the district and the business office, the principals, etc., and getting Steve and Mike Huffman acclimated with the district. Part of that acclimation process has been to physically go to the buildings. Obviously, PRA and JP Cullen have been around for quite a while, and so Mike and Steve are taking the time now to get to know the layouts of things, and I'm sure they'll offer plenty of suggestions throughout the process as they go. And so I would expect in the next week or so they'll be able to share with you what those templates are now that they're building the relationships. And PRA has been they're in our meetings and they're taking minutes of all the conversations that they're having. And so again, those will be shared on a regular basis. So what may happen is the spreadsheet template that Mike showed me, I thought it'd be great. It has the updated budget numbers. It has updated pictures. It'll have narrative to go with it. That's obviously be a lot more robust once there's some things to report on more from the construction side of things. Right now, we're just in the phase of going through the schematic design. Of course, the board will approve the final schematic design, which is where the building layouts will be. But there's still plenty of discussion to happen in those. And so we'll be sharing out with you what that template looks like in the next week. And you'll have that in advance of the next meeting, so you can kind of ask questions about it or if any feedback on that. But again, we're just getting them used to the people that they're going to be working with.
Any questions? Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next, we will invite Jerry Schutz to the podium. Discussion and possible action on financial institution to maintain or process referendum proceeds.
Thank you. As outlined in your packet, we have a memo that essentially explains the two financial companies that would service the district's proceeds from the $59.9 million referendum that voters approved on April 2nd. The business office staff and I conducted interviews with American Deposit Management Company, also known as ADM, and PMA Financial Network. And so those were conducted over the last 2 weeks. And essentially just how folks know how this works is that the bonds are then issued to either one of these companies, and as indicated during pre-referendum communications, these companies then hold those funds and then pay the vendors directly, so they're actually not ever officially deposited into the district's deposits of accounts and things of that nature. So for coding purposes, to Fund 49, debt service, all those sorts of things, it's a very efficient way to manage our funds and also pay vendors directly. Both companies presented very, very strong proposals.
ADM is paid by a small percentage of the proceeds, or 0.2% or 20 basis points. They projected a weighted average of interest earnings of 2.59%. PMA Financial Network, they have a more of a variable charge-out rate, which is a maximum of 0.25 basis points, or I'm sorry, 0.25 percentage or 25 basis points for CDs, a maximum of 0.15% or 15 basis points for U.S. Treasuries and government agency securities, and then a maximum of 10 basis points for local banks. It is important to note that both companies can and would offer some potential for both banks to bid on any of the funds that are collected. And then also it's important to note that PMA's estimated yield was 2.51%. So reference checks were conducted on both companies. Staff felt that both firms would serve the district equally well. The one thing that had ADM standing out a little bit more than PMA was the fact that it was a higher yield of the $59.9 million. And then equally as important to staff was that there's a direct interface and an upload of documents to Skyward Financials, which is the platform for which we use. So staff's recommendation was ADM based on that slightly higher yield, and then as well as the direct interface with Skyward Financials.
Any questions? We need action on this.
I would recommend that we authorize staff to enter an agreement with American Deposit Management, ADM, to maintain the referendum proceeds, manage investments of those proceeds, and pay vendors for referendum-related projects.
I'll second that.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Mike, as you just heard him outline. We will roll call this one also. Guess I'm back to my right. Rick?
Yes.
Diamond?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Joe is yes. Brian?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Tom?
Yes.
7-0, motion clearly passes. Okay, thank you for that. All right, miscellaneous. Action on staffing report, professional and support staff hires, resignations, and retirements.
Mr. President, if we could have Mr. Triggendorf talk a little bit about the new format of our staffing report.
Absolutely.
I was just going to talk about a little bit about what we had chatted about earlier. The updated staffing report was sent to you along with the attachments for the 3 new teachers. They're all at the high school. 1 science, 1 math, and 1 EL that is shared with the high school and middle school.
Joe, I make a motion to approve the staffing report.
I'll preempt you just one quick moment. I am going to add to the staffing report, I think, the information that a lot of folks have waited for with bated breath here. We have an unusual circumstance of 2 administrators resigning that are included in this report. And as we had promised the community, we would release further details relative to those resignations as time was appropriate. Tonight being that time, as we have released those agreements and the supplemental augmentation that was provided to them as of 5 o'clock tonight in a public release, if you will. And I want to I want to address both of those resignations and offer a bit of context, if you will, and following that, we'll share what we think maybe would happen next. So I will start and read a statement that was helped create with our attorney Shana, and today, as promised, We will be releasing the resignation agreements entered into between the Board of Education for the Milton School District and Jerry Schutz and Tim Scheiger, respectively. The agreements result in both gentlemen ending their employment with the district on June 30th, 2019. On April 22nd, 2019, the board members authorized its legal counsel to negotiate these agreements with the attorneys representing Dr. Schutz and Dr. Scheiger. The terms in these agreements are within the parameters approved by the board in closed session. Moreover, the board members were kept apprised of the progress of negotiations. Therefore, any suggestion that the board members were unaware of or unfamiliar with the terms in those agreements is inaccurate. It is important to remember that the board had employment contracts with Dr. Schutz and Dr. Scheiger with expiration dates of June 30th, 2020. The contracts could only have been terminated earlier than June 30th, 2020 by the board for just cause or good and sufficient reason. As has been stated repeatedly by this board and the third-party investigators hired by the board to address specific allegations, there is no evidence to suggest that either Dr. Schutz or Dr. Scheiger did anything wrong, let alone engaged in any conduct that would rise to the level of just cause or good and sufficient reason to terminate an employment contract. School boards enter into resignation agreements with contracted employees for many different reasons. Typically, one or both parties wish to end the relationship early and terminate the contractual obligations that both parties have to one another. In most cases, there are concerns about litigation between the parties and a desire to limit or eliminate the opportunity for such litigation. As you will see, now that the resignation agreements have been released, Dr. Scheiger and Dr. Schutz have agreed to resign effective June 30th, 2019, and to waive all of the compensation and benefits required by their employment contracts after that date. They have also agreed to waive any and all lawsuits and legal claims against the district, its board, board members, employees, and others, with the exception of their claims against board member Brian Quapple, as outlined in the letter from the attorney to Mr. Quapple dated March 21st of 2019. In exchange for these waivers, the board has agreed to pay to Dr. Scheiger and Dr. Schutz an amount to compensate them for some of the wages that they are waiving by mutually agreeing to terminate the contract 1 year early, and a separate amount to compensate them for the attorney fees that they incurred during the last few months and other compensatory damages arising out of the investigations and related issues. The board is comfortable that these amounts mitigate any damages caused to Dr. Scheiger and Dr. Schutz arising out of the investigations and related issues. Many of you may be worried about the costs associated with these payments. First, it is important to know that the payments are structured in a way spread over 2 fiscal years so as to avoid creating cash flow issues for the district. Second, the district's insurance carrier, EMC, will be contributing a substantial amount toward the settlements. Indeed, the total cost directly to the district will be less than $80,000. Apology, I have page 2. I want to reiterate the information that I shared on May 1st, 2019. The School District of Milton is grateful to Dr. Scheiger and Dr. Schutz for their leadership, hard work, and ongoing commitment to making things better in the district. We look forward to working with them to wrap up the 18-19 school year, and we wish them well in their future endeavors. It is the hope of the Board of Education that these changes provide an opportunity for our district, the board, the administration, the staff, the students, and the larger community to move forward and to focus on the continued growth and success of the district. Thank you, and it is signed by me, Joe Martin, as president. I would also add to that, we, in closed session, of course, negotiated the terms that we actually arrived at with the absolute best interest of the district and the community as our driving factor. There were several paths possible forward, and on the advice of our council, we chose the path that we felt that treated everyone fairly and exposed us to the absolute minimum financial liability. As you are aware, these documents are public. They are shared out. We will after I'm finished here, I will probably not make much further comment for the media, but we will certainly answer all questions that arise out of releasing these documents, and we'll probably schedule a format in which we would address all those questions. So as those arise, please apprise us of those, and we will address those hopefully collectively so that we can all get the same news. But I think several of you wondered what the heck are they doing in a 3-hour closed session, which we had a handful of, and this ultimate path was the culmination of the work we did in those meetings. It was not an easy decision to make, nor lighthearted, as I think I've shared with some folks. So we'll close with that and invite anyone that chooses to need the documents to let us know, and we will provide those upon request. I'm being prompted by Mr. Tukendorf.
Yes, sir. Would you like Tim and Jerry to read their augmentations or not?
I'm not going to read them. If Tim and Jerry would like to, I would invite them to do that. I think this is the only forum where that would be allowed. It's a bit impromptu, and I apologize, but I did not indicate that I was going to read them. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Board President Martin. This is the same document that's released that the media has already, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Approving the resignations.
A school community is most effective when administrative leadership and the elected school board align in setting and moving strategic initiatives forward that are student-focused. Alignment happens through respectful, responsible communication. Over the past several months, a misalignment between board members has been growing. The dysfunction has negatively impacted me, the administrative team, and the school community I proudly lead. My decision to resign and leave a staff that I value, an internal positive culture that I've helped to shape, and dear friends that I've made in Milton was not made lightly or without great consideration. Recently, the illegal release of staff employment records has caused erroneous public scrutiny. To be clear, multiple independent investigations have found that no employee of the school district violated any law, board, or school district policy. More specifically, the results of the investigation showed that my behavior with regards to the issuance of stipends was done with the full knowledge and support of school board leadership and found to be consistent with board policy and past district practice. It is disappointing that there are members of the school board who would choose to come to false conclusions and or make false assertions in the media without seeking clarity from administration, other board members, or legal counsel. Acting blindly under the purported motivation of transparency is both damaging and destructive. Assertions of wrongdoing should be addressed with due process, an employment right I have not been afforded. Without this constitutional protection, the careless accusations made by school board members around my lawful actions have inflicted serious reputational damage. This damage has been further compounded by some community members who have no interest in seeking or accepting the truth. The false accusations levied and carried forward by board members have created an agenda of hatred towards me as an individual and towards members of the district's administrative team. The failure to provide due process demonstrates that these false assertions are nothing but attacks driven by personal agendas of various individuals on both the school board and within the school community. There are many positive things happening within the school district. We have a top-notch staff who truly care about the social, emotional, and academic well-being of our students. We enjoy great support by families, community, businesses, and organizations. The number of new opportunities created for students over the past 6 years, excellent results on standardized assessments, school district report cards, and continued increases in enrollment confirm this optimism. There are awesome things happening within the district. I wish the district continued successes. These past few months demonstrate the board as a whole is not student-focused. Moving forward, the school board needs to be committed to working together for the kids and community. I challenge them to set standards for their behavior, then determine and communicate their expectations to the next administration. The board owes the next superintendent and the administrative team this clarity so they can work together to make the experiences for our students even better. The sooner the board comes together to focus on the kids, the better the school district community will be. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. After reflecting upon what has been a uniquely challenging time for my family and me, we felt it best to augment the resignation agreement and reiterate what we felt were important facts and to add context to the decision to resign my position from the School District of Milton. The facts of the investigation completed by Attorney Lubinsky in early March are very clear. There were no violations of board policy and no violations of law associated with stipends being issued for extra work performed outside of my contract. As Attorney Lubinsky indicated in her release of findings, the manner in which the stipends were issued to a technology department staff member and I were consistent with a long-standing practice of how the district pays employees for doing extra work and came for funds that were within the school board's approved 2018-2019 budget. What wasn't so clear, and the public should know, is how we got there. The position of communications coordinator was within the board's approved 2018-19 budget. In early November, Dr. Steiger told me after the budget was passed by the board that school board member Michael Pierce asked him if he could do the communications work in-house and tried to save the district money. Dr. Steiger then asked me about our capacity to do that work in-house, and I explained to him that I would check and I would speak with our technology director and get back to him. Our technology director indicated that we had a staff member who could assist with the technical work on the website's now more than 450 active pages and assist in managing the district's multiple social media accounts. I discussed I could still do crisis communications, media engagement, press releases, and coordinate open records requests, processing, and sharing curricular and co-curricular related website and social media work, all of which would be in addition to the job duties as the Administrative Operations Director, a job that oversaw 5 different departments. The net effect of that decision to have existing staff to do the work of a communication coordinator outside of my contract and his letter of employment was more than $20,000 in budgetary expense savings to district taxpayers within the board's approved budget, all of which was referenced in Attorney Lubinsky's investigative report. The process used to grant those 2 stipends is the exact same process used within the School District of Milton for many years. Attorney Lubinsky's report demonstrates and explains in great detail those facts. Records provided to local media outlets as part of filling open records requests demonstrated that fact. Of interesting note, Attorney Lubinsky's report further demonstrates and cites several administrators received stipends for work outside of their contract for doing extra work outside their contract, all using the exact same process or a very similar one to the matter in which mine was issued. That doesn't mean this process couldn't or shouldn't be improved. It simply means what we did at that time reflected a practice of exactly how things had been done in the past and in full accordance with board policy and the law. These are the undisputed facts. The events of early February 2019 stemming from the release of my personnel records by a board member have been and continue to be the cause of considerable emotional and social distress for my family and me. Public assertions of criminality made by school board members to the media before they even talked to me were equally as hurtful. Days later, I was directed not to discuss the matter by our district legal counsel, which is a directive I followed. I remained silenced while inaccurate statements and subsequent hate were spread throughout the community. When the Board of Education released its findings of the stipend investigation in early March and reported no violations of board policy and no violations of law took place on my part or that of any district employee, my wife Jen and I decided we would wait 3 days prior to deciding what to do. We felt if someone, anyone, would apologize to us for what they had done, that we would not get an attorney and work toward resolving the issues with those who made false statements about me. When several days passed and no statements of apology and no attempts at retracting those false statements that wrongfully asserted criminal conduct took place, we felt we had no choice but to get an attorney and work to clear our family's name. After engaging an attorney and positioning for potential litigation, did a redaction and apology finally come. To this day, there has been no in-person apology made to my family or to me by any board member who wrongfully asserted criminal conduct. Although some attempts were made to resolve this dispute with a different ending, the inability or unwillingness of all 7 board members to fully commit to improving our relationship and support the administration moving forward found my family and me believing that this would continue to be a potentially emotionally unhealthy, an unsafe position to work in going forward. And thus we agreed it was best for all to separate and move forward. There is now an opportunity for us all to pause, reflect, and focus on what could and should be a bright future for our school district and community. This job has afforded my family and me the opportunity to work with many incredibly special people. Several former and current school board members have been and remain very committed to leading and serving our students and staff through the many challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for our school district. Many are also committed to a very productive, meaningful relationship with those that make the school district of Milton a very special place. Our amazing administrators, teachers, and support staff. The opportunity to work with and get to know the hundreds of staff members who care so deeply about our children and the other nearly 3,500 students they serve has been a very special and personally and professionally rewarding experience. I have a deeper sense of appreciation for the educational profession and all those administrators, teachers, and support staff who serve the needs of children and families throughout our school district each and every day. Our family is also so very grateful for so many friends and co-workers who have supported us and continue to support us throughout this challenging time. While the darkness found within some of the hate and factual inaccuracies spread throughout this community the past few months cast a dark shadow upon the school district of Milton, it need not last. The great work of our staff and their love of children will shine through the darkness of hate, because hate doesn't make a community better. While challenging each other and sharing differing opinions via productive discussions about how we can improve things should be welcome here, illegal, reckless conduct and character assassination should not be. Milton is better than that. It is my sincere hope for our school district and our community that one day all 7 school board members will once again be better than that as well. Thank you.
You don't have an augmented statement. You do not get that opportunity because you're not resigning from the school district. I can answer the question that you got. I checked with legal counsel, and this is the proper time and venue for that to take place.
It's not noticed on the agenda. I'm not saying that because of them, I'm saying by process it's not on the agenda.
This is a resignation agreement and the subsequent augmentation, and it is...
It does not say augmentation on here. It says we're supposed to vote on...
They are, by virtue of their association, part of the resignations agreements.
Mr. President, I make a motion to accept the staffing report as presented. Oh, okay. Discussion.
I'll second. Motion by Tom, seconded by Mike to approve the staffing report as presented. Discussion?
Yes. The only discussion I really have is I will be voting no on these. One of the things that concerns me is the statement that was just read by President Joe Martin, which is a statement that represents the board. Please know that I did not get this statement until about 7:00 a.m. this morning, and I had not time to read it until about 3 o'clock, and I did find some inaccuracies in there, so I cannot say that that is representative of my opinion. And I will also say that even though we got it this morning, Mr. Martin did receive this on May 8th, so why it wasn't provided to the board in that time, I am not sure. So based on the inaccuracies of that, as well as some of the language in the resignation agreements, I will be voting no.
What exactly is an inaccuracy that you found?
One inaccuracy says the terms in these agreements are within the parameters approved by the school board in a closed session. That is incorrect.
The terms in the resignation agreements differ by $1,000 from the aggregate amounts we were negotiated or authorizing our attorney to negotiate with the aforementioned individuals. Rather than hijack everyone's time for a $1,000 amendment to that particular agreement, Shana suggested that I poll the board with their response to that, which I did. The agreements were signed by both Tim and Jerry on Friday, and I believe the date is April 26th.
Correct.
I spent the weekend polling the board individually and explained exactly the parameters of the agreements, and they are exactly as we approved in closed session with the exception of Dr. Shiger's total payout is $1,000 higher than we authorized. It also is $30,000 less than we authorized with respect to the potential health insurance payout. So which part of that is inaccurate?
Well, you just mentioned that that in here it says within the parameters. Well, you already said that. Well, it wasn't within parameters. One being $100,000, the other one being a $30,000 savings. But you also forgot to mention that the other thing that was in the parameters that was changed was that the payout was initially approved to be until Mr. Shiger received a comparable employment, in which case that in negotiations was taken out.
You are correct, and I polled every board member with that a specific explanation, and everyone agreed yes.
Right.
I did not sign those agreements until I had received responses in the affirmative from all 7 board members.
Correct, but that goes to the fact that the terms in these agreements are within parameters approved by the board in closed session. That makes that inaccurate.
Would you have preferred I call a special meeting for $1,000?
I would have preferred you called a special meeting so everybody could look at the contracts or the agreements in writing, but that's just my preference. I'm just saying this right here, because you didn't give me enough time the board enough time to actually review it and comment on it, it is not representative of my statement, and I think you proved basically you proved yourself that the terms of the agreements are within the parameters approved by the board in closed session is incorrect.
Okay, so noted.
So I just want to understand, it was approved by the board in closed session, and then the 2 things that changed were approved by all the board members during your polling prior to signing, correct?
That's correct. Technically, there are 3 things if we talked about the gross compensation or the gross payment, the waiver of the need for insurance beyond the end of August, which we had proposed 18 months, and then the uncoupling it from any future employment that Dr. Shiger would have. So that all three things were agreed to by everybody individually.
That's not in dispute.
Is there any other discussion on this motion on the table?
Thank you for allowing the transparency of the augmentation. I appreciate that.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. Motion passes. Action on gifts and donations.
Make a motion to approve $4,504.42 for gratitude.
Second. Motion by Mike, seconded by Rick, to accept the generous contributions our community continues to make. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'll abstain because my company's represented on it.
So noted. Motion passes. Meeting dates.
All right, so we have the next board meeting is May 28th. Special board meeting is it's a Tuesday, and it'll be here at 6:30. And again, it's to talk through the things that Chris had mentioned, as well as the open enrollment exceptions, notifications.
It's not a regular meeting, no, there will not be a regular meeting on the agenda. It's just items that need approval before the next regular board meeting.
Okay.
So it should be a relatively short meeting, hopefully. And our next regularly scheduled one will be June 10th.
If you are available, we'd like to have your pictures taken for the website on the 28th too, since it's a short meeting. So if you could, I'll wear your Sunday best, and we're going to get a group picture and update your individual photos for the website. And then evening, if you're available to come at 6 o'clock. We're getting rid of the black background. Anybody not available at 6 o'clock on? Okay, no problem. 6 o'clock on Tuesday, May 28th.
I would like to set up an HR committee meeting maybe next week, and we'll talk with the HR members about that. And with that, come up with a recommendation, get that recommendation out to the full board so they are willing to have some serious discussion and possible action at the next full board meeting on the 20th.
And Mike, I think we should meet and Joe and figure out a time for a finance committee meeting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that summarizes all the meetings. And agenda-wise, we are up to motion to go into executive session, subject to state statute 19.85, parent 1, parent C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility relative to the superintendent evaluation. And I will need a motion to do that.
So
Second.
Moved by Diamond, seconded by Tom, and we will roll call vote that. And I lost track of where I am, so I'm going left. Tom?
Yes. Yes.
Rick? I'm sorry. Mike?
Yes.
Brian?
No, I prefer open session.
Okay. Joe is yes. Karen?
Yes.
Is yes. Diamond?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Yes, 6-1. Motion passes. We are in closed session.